For what? Oh, hockey. Will was also, he was the track MVP for the conference. Brock is the first kid in our school since Nate Stanley to be on conference in 3 sports. And Nate Stanley plays for the Vikings. Easy guys.
Okay, I think we'll call the meeting to order. Janet, I have it in my head. Janet, could you please take the roll and welcome.
Yes, thank
to
you.
the first board meeting running stuff.
Okay, Chris Freeman,
Here.
Mark Kilman, Tanya Boothby,
Yes.
Clint Moses,
Here.
Carl Palmer,
Present.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Here.
Charlie Schneider,
Here.
Angie Skillings,
Here.
David Steyer,
Here. Okay, thank you. We have a quorum to conduct business. This meeting was properly noticed as well. Just a clarifying point, 2 meetings ago, this board did pass by majority order to make mask use optional. So just in case there's any questions from board members or other people in the district, that is why for the last 2 meetings now we haven't had to wear masks if we don't want to. It's optional in the SDMA after June 4th. So move on to item C, agenda order approval revision. Does anybody have anything for tonight? Okay, recommendations and commendations. We have nothing. Community communications, I do have a couple here tonight. We'll start with Dr. Bruce Trimble. Bruce, if you could have a seat at the chair, state your name, address, and make sure you speak into a mic. You have 3 minutes.
The name is Dr. Bruce Trimble. I know that's confusing because there's another Dr. Bruce Trimble in town too. He's the one that works and I'm retired. So, you're used to seeing people younger than I am using a teleprompter. I'll try to stumble along without one. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about, since we don't have a lot of time, I think most of us have been seeing on TV terrible things about education in our country. I came here in the 1966, seen a lot of changes in the Menomonie school district, and most of them have been positive. And I'd like to commend any of you who have had part in the positive things that have happened here in our district. The one thing that really bothers me, there are a number of things that we see on television regarding education that are horrible. And I hope that none of them find their way to this school district. The one that is really being pushed right now is the critical race theory, which means that if any of you have children on the way, grandchildren on the way, that they are either racist or they're victims before they're ever born. Depending on what color their skin is, they're in one group or another. I don't believe that, and I hope none of you do. Most of us were raised here in America, born in a fine part of America, the best nation in the history of the world. It happened to us through no fault of our own. We were just lucky enough to be born here. And most of us are proud to be Americans, and we shouldn't feel that we're guilty because we're one color or another. And we shouldn't feel that we're a victim just because we're one color or another. Hopefully those days are far behind us, and I believe they are. And I guess I would conclude by, so that I can get it done in 3 minutes. If you folks know of anybody in the school system who believes in critical race theory, or would even support it, I would hope that you do everything you can to get that person eliminated from our school district and replaced with somebody who's intelligent enough and honorable enough to be entrusted with the honor of influencing the children of this community. Anything else is unexcusable.
Thank you, Bruce. At this time, I'd like to call on Craig Olson. Same?
3 minutes?
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna do my best here. Hey everybody, I'm Craig Olson, 737 River Heights Road. I teach social studies at the high school, as most of you know. Boys track coach, girls cross country coach. I'm with Will Oakler, and this is Brock Thornton, they're track and field captains, as well as Adam Topper back there, who is girls track coach and the boys cross country coach. I think one of the best things you guys do here is board commendations. And I want to flip the script on that, and I want to present a commendation to a board member, Carl Palmer here. He has, look, this has been a tough year, as you all know. And about 10 months ago, as we were kind of floundering in limbo as to whether or not we were going to have a cross-country or football or track season or anything, we knew that we weren't going to have a lot of spectators at our events. And Carl said, I will go and take pictures. And he took pictures at every single high school and middle school track and cross-country meet, uploaded them to our Shutterfly account, which is on our team website. A lot of grandparents, parents, they couldn't come to meets. Carl was there documenting the whole thing with his awesome camera. Incredible positive attitude with kids. He took 25,000 pictures this year, over the course of the year, uploaded to our website. That level of service and dedication, not only to the team, but to the individual student athletes. And you know, track is a very big tent. We're about 12% of the student population. Everyone from very rich to very poor, every race you can imagine. Level of ability, Carl was there documenting their experience. Today we're going to give him an award, Excellence in Service Award. If you guys can come on up with the indulgence of the president. They want to present Carl with a plaque, and we would like to get a picture if possible. I don't know, I'm only at 1:55, so I still got a minute.
Should I honor up your split? Brian will take a picture also.
And I know there's decorum here and you're not supposed to engage, but can we give him a round of applause, please?
Do you want to add anything?
I want this picture. I don't want to be any.
I have some of him though, if you want.
Can you hold up at least the plaque too? Yeah, I love this event. Thank you so much. All right, thank you. $25,000 pictures, ladies and gentlemen. All that. Thank you.
And thank you for Craig and Adam, Will and Brock for coming in tonight as well. So
Yeah, thank you, guys.
appreciate that. Okay, we'll move on to personal consent agenda. Action to approve personnel actions. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Angie, is there a second?
I second.
Carl? Any discussion? Any discussion? Okay. Janet?
Okay.
Let's vote. Okay, motion passes by an 8-0 vote. The action agenda, approve policy 225, district administrator evaluation. This is the policy that we talked about at our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Clint, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Angie? Discussion, anything, Joe?
There were just a few minor suggestions. I think, Chris, you had some verbiage that you suggested. Those changes were made and it should be ready for approval tonight.
Any questions from the board?
I have one question,
Sure.
and maybe I'm just misreading. So the first paragraph, it says written evaluation at least every third year. And then when you continue down, it talks about the biannual process in paragraph 3. Are those different things, or is 3 years versus 6 months? What am I missing?
Well, the policy wants to make sure it covers state law. However, the practice, and that's what we're going to be working on after the meeting tonight, ideally we would have a biennial evaluation. But by law, we want to make sure it's in policy that the board meets its obligation.
Okay.
Which is once every 3 years. So. Amy?
Good question. And I don't know if this is the right time to ask a question, maybe the retreat, but once we do this evaluation and we switch it around, from what I understand, July, not this year, but July of next year would be the annual report, okay? And then January is just checking, correct? Okay, but doesn't the state law say that contracts for administrators have to be either renewal or non-renewal in January?
Correct.
Okay, so if we're doing the actual in July, then that, to me, that's confusing as to, because I would think the evaluation would be the kicker for the renewal or non-renewal.
I think that goes back to, we had quite a bit of discussion about the timing of our evaluation, and there's two schools of thought. One, you can do it on the calendar year to coincide with the contract. The other is to do it on the school year to coincide with the school year, and I guess I feel it was the board's intent to go and try it the other way. We've done it the other way for many years, and just felt we'd get a better evaluation to tie it in with the school year and work it that way. If it's different or the board feels differently about it. Charlie?
One thing I remember that we discussed and I thought it was very appropriate is that if we do the evaluation, the final, if you will, in July, and let's say it's poor, that would give us and the administrator 6 months roughly to improve their performance, put them on somewhat of an improvement plan before you then non-renew in January, versus in January you give the person a poor review and then don't renew their contract. Did you really give them the opportunity to improve? So I think it makes a lot of sense to have it the way that it's going to be set up now, in my
When
perspective.
you say that, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't, meeting what we need to meet as far as the law is concerned, that's all.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Janet, let's go. Oh. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
We're just gonna play a little trick on you, Janet. You sure?
It didn't come through.
Okay, Zadowski, I'm gonna vote, all right?
Just so everyone knows, and we covered this before, but Jamie is retiring here at the end of the month, and she'll surely be missed. Janet Quinn is training, and she'll be starting on July 1st. So Dave purposely withheld
Joe
his vote
asked if I was
based on my request, so Janet can train, because we do have that happen every so often where board docs is not responsive. So we want to just make sure we work some of these things through.
And she handled it very well.
Well done.
Okay, motion passes by an 8-0 vote. Discussion, we'll move on to item 4A, report on summer maintenance. We have Kevin with us today. Take it away, Kevin. Got some much needed rain here tonight.
Yes.
All right, so I've shared with you folks basically my summer to-do list. So I'll kind of read through some of the highlights of that. Feel free to ask me any questions. It may not be the most exciting discussion in the world, but there's some good things on here. Starting out with some of the things that we're going to do district-wide up at the top of my list, all sites. Our summer starts with our custodians getting in our classrooms, doing the deep clean. We empty the rooms out, take care of floors, clean, sanitize all the furniture, put everything back to be ready for the start of the school year. Other things district-wide this year, we have 50 Walmart hand sanitizers that have been distributed out to all of the sites. Our custodians are putting those up later in the summer. I'm having my first meeting later this week with the vendor to start discussions on district-wide paper product dispenser replacements in entirety. Some other things happening district-wide, our maintenance staff will be out on pothole patrol, filling in some of them that have shown up since winter. And last but not least, we're replacing our HVAC controllers. Moving on to site specifics, high school, the sign out at the entrance of the facility is in disrepair. We're going to re-roof it, bring it back to life. The gym floor is going to be refinished this summer. We're going to resurface all 10 tennis courts. Along with resurfacing, we purchased new nets and posts, as well as rebuilt the service road around the tennis courts. Some floor tile repairs in the pool area, replacement of some VFDs, another broken window in the field house will be replaced, as well as some plumbing repairs in the hallways now at the school itself.
The floor tile repair, is that in the pool or just the floor around the pool?
Around the pool. Middle school is going to see some fresh paint this summer. We're starting out with about a dozen classrooms and then some office areas. The track at the middle school has been resealed and painted. That is already done. It looks great. We're doing some sidewalk repairs, putting in some new stall dividers in the restrooms, some floor tile repairs in the hallways. The gym floor at the middle school will be refinished, and today the divider wall came down and a new drop-down curtain should be up tomorrow. Wakanda and Oakland will both have their parking lots resealed this summer. Wakanda's going to have one minor modification just to help improve drainage behind the school, kind of by the chiller and playground area. Some of our younger students like to play in the water puddle there, and we're trying to limit that. River Heights has kind of an interesting story. Even though it's probably one of our newer lots, it is very difficult to plow snow. The entire front lot is bordered with a traditional city curb was. We took out a portion of that and put a transition curb in so our maintenance staff can plow right through it out into the field. So that little bit of work should save time over and over again throughout the winter for snow removal. Lastly, at River Heights, some minor electrical upgrades for the library office. Downsville had a little bit of landscaping already. We have some fence repairs to do, and we'll be back down to take down, it looks like 4 trees are either dead or dying. Safety precaution. Much of the same at Knapp. They will be getting a new sign this summer. Ms. Humphrey and I have reviewed the first couple of designs, and we're waiting on a couple more to choose the winning sign. I wanted to put purchases in here, and this end of year purchases have been, we've made some pretty good ones in my opinion, and thanks to Dr. Zadowski for helping me make these happen. If anybody's been shopping for a vehicle lately, you know it's kind of difficult, but we were able to trade in one of our vehicles this year. We also purchased a new spreader for our tool cat, and we're hoping that's going to really help us out this winter for controlling the ice at our, primarily the middle school is where we're going to probably use it the most. Then we did some general stock up, turf supplies, grass seeds, fertilizer, plumbing supplies, athletic field paint, all things that we use every year and will give us a little breathing room in next year's budget starting next week. And then finally, our staffing is looking good. Our buildings and grounds department is full. We have our 3 seasonal lawn care staff members going now. We have our 2 seasonal painters on board. And 3 sanitizers for summer school, 2 of them at the high school and 1 at Riverheads.
Okay, questions for Ken? Sure.
Was it all tennis courts reconstructed during the last referendum? Or are they older than that? I can't recall. It seems like, the reason I asked the question, it seems like we're resurfacing them pretty quickly. Is there something else going on there, or does time just fly more than
I think time
than I
just
imagine?
flies. I looked into that a little bit, and you get different answers depending on the contractors that you ask. But if it was done in 2014, we're at 21 now. At 7 years, I've been hearing 5-6 years is about what to expect.
I have one question, a little bit off subject, but could you just talk very briefly about the weight room and how that project ended up, since it was at the end of the school year or start of summer?
Sure, so we can call that summer too. Yeah, we went in, took out the ceiling, put drywall up on the walls that were wood coated. Just gave it a fresh coat of paint, new LED lighting, new flooring, all new equipment. The project went better than I think anybody could expect. The amount of weight equipment, weightlifting equipment that had to leave that room and come in the room was just, the kids helped so much. It went very smooth. It looks great. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a stop over there. Turned out really nice.
Okay, any questions? Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Item 4B, review work plan for the 2021-2022 school year. Dr. Jadosa.
Okay, so based on the changes to the strategic plan and based on what we're looking at towards the next year, we tried to put together what we would consider to be a work plan. And this is just a discussion item. This will come back to the board on July 12th. But what I guess I wanted to do is see if board members had any feedback or input on the work plan for 2021-2022.
This is a major goals document, Joe?
Yes.
I love the green, the prioritization that we taught,
That was your idea?
yeah, I like that.
No wonder you like it.
Well, you know,
Thanks for doing
it. It was a good idea.
the point was, if we do have to adjust operations in the fall because of unanticipated COVID or something, you know, go through and say, these are the most important things, we can let those other ones sit back burner for a while. So that exercise has been done now. So this board doesn't have to deal with that either, if it comes up in the fall. And if things are going great, then we'll just do everything on the plan, right?
That's the plan.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
So, no, I really dig that.
No, I think that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing it. Any other questions or suggestions? This is what we're asking Joe to accomplish. Chris?
I got a question. I just didn't, agreed. We like the green highlighted goals, and they're pretty similar. So it's pretty clear you identified a problem across the board in our schools that we really need to focus on, especially with literacy skills and the reading. I'm wondering if that isn't, okay, so that's a focus, but is that connected to us, like a study that we're thinking about in terms of could this be a curriculum issue? Could this be I know they cut down the amount of time that kids were in maybe English classes in the middle school, but that might have just been a temporary thing, English coded, but are there structural things that we're looking at instead of just saying that we're going to work on this? Could we be provided with more detail in terms of what it is about this problem area that we're thinking that we want to focus on? And then I was kind of looking through okay, how do those focus on literacy skills fit into our plan for the overall goals and how we're meeting those? It was 2019 to 2024? How those fit into those measurable goals that we're trying to define. What I'm just trying to do is see how these different pieces can kind of fit together to try to help bring the focus into relationship to our overall plan for the district. And I guess the bigger thing that maybe I was trying to get my head around it doesn't appear that the plan has been updated. It has showed that things that we've met for our goals, but are we voting on approving the district plan as is, or are you going to be adding to that so we can see what the new goals is? Because some of the goals weren't updated since 2019, and we took a hiatus on some of the target goals and setting baselines, but there weren't like development on some of those. And I know that like the COVID year set us back in terms of the overall strategy, but I'm just trying to see how we can bring the different goals of like what you targeted for the coming year in relationship to how this kind of fits into the overall development of the goals for the district in the big picture. That make sense?
I'm not quite certain what you're getting at there, Chris.
Well, so we're focusing on literacy skills at elementary, middle school, and high school levels.
That's part of our strategic plan, yeah.
Okay, and those are all part of the green highlighted part of what that first readjustment document was about. I was wondering how we're fitting that, right, that targeting of those literacy skills into the 5-year plan that we have. Because I didn't see it being adjusted or being accounted for in some of the measurable goals we're looking at. So for example, one of the areas where I saw a measurable goal for student achievement was in relationship to the SDMA in relationship to other Wisconsin schools and our testing. And I get that, but it seems to me that we're making a concerted effort to really focus on literacy, which is a little bit different than what those state testing exams are all about. So if we're thinking about how we're making a focus to kind of meet our students, is this done through individual education plans? Is this done through reassessing? Or do we have a problem in our reading curriculum? You know, is that why we're seeing a focus on literacy at every level in the SDMA? Is there a way in which we're trying to target certain aspects within the curriculum that we currently have? Because it's clear you figured out that this is the place that we need to focus on, but I'm wondering what the particulars are of that focus and then how those can fit into the 5-year plan.
Well, I guess what I would say specific to the literacy piece, and you're speaking a lot about Pillar 1, we prioritize goals in each of the pillars, but specific to Pillar 1, there's a lot about student literacy. That's not something that I personally, as a superintendent, targeted. That was from all the information we gathered through the strategic planning process, through all the surveys, all the focus groups, and that's really where that came from. In terms of prioritizing it, we tried to look through each pillar and identify what are the things we're going to focus on right away. And would I like to see our literacy scores go up? Absolutely. But that's really what we heard from the strategic planning process. But I think maybe what you're getting at too is with the measurable pieces. That's something the lead team and I will be working on tomorrow and then the week after, and then bringing that forward to the board. A lot of our measurements are going to have to be reset. We know that with the hiatus in state testing, our baselines that we had set very likely will have to be adjusted. So that's something that the lead team and I will be working on and bring forward to the board at the next meeting. But I appreciate the thought.
Anybody else? Okay, Chris?
So I guess, I get that. I guess the follow-up would be then, is this something that we get to see before we vote on adopting that? It would seem like that should be part of a discussion that maybe is now not going to be discussed, but just voted down, up or down at the, we got the first meeting, the next meeting is July 12th, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So that means that we won't have any discussion, that it'll just be an up or down vote, which sometimes when we have discussions on just like up or down votes, it can get kind of, doesn't flow as well. So since that's part of a piece that we're voting on, it would have been nice if we had that for this particular meeting to figure out how these particular strategies are fitting into like our plan and what those kind of goals are. Especially, and I'm not doing this for any other reason except we did just have one of our professionals in town come to talk to us about our reading curriculum and thinking about more comprehensively about if there are some fundamental structural things that we need to think about what specifically those might be, and just having more specifics about what a focus. Because just think about the range of like different types of strategies you have to adopt if you're going to work on literacy for elementary, middle school, and high school. They've got different targets, they've got different outcomes. They've got a range of ways in which you want to think very specifically about what that looks like. So my goal is that we have some kind of more information so that we can feel really comfortable about how you're addressing that goal, so that we can make sure that we can reach a, measure that we can demonstrate to the, community that we're like, yep, we've picked out these target areas and they're graduated based upon grade level, and this is what we're looking for outcomes. And so I didn't see it in this one, so I hope that we can really beef that up for the next one, so we can put together a plan we can all be like, yeah, this is pretty solid.
Well, and that's what this is all about, and we've had this timeline for a few months now, and, for instance, you've had this for a couple weeks, and, for the first pillar, for instance, college and career and life-ready graduates, what we highlighted in green as a priority was to review and monitor student achievement and reestablish baseline levels as needed following the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so as we get our data back, we'll be able to bring that forward. So if you do have any suggestions, now's the time. Do you have any suggestions?
Okay, what I understand is that you're talking about two different things. One is talking about the way in which that our test scores are coming through and how we think about those. And what I was looking at was a very specific focus on literacy skills, which is not necessarily linked to test scores. What I was thinking about is there may be some things that obviously came from that survey of the community that they wanted us to work on literacy and learning skills. And so what I wanted to understand, not being somebody who directs curriculum, but having responded to an expert for the community that came to testify to the board that we may have fundamental problems in a reading curriculum that's leading some kids, especially those kids that have dyslexia of the kind, how we're addressing and how we determine that this is a cross-curriculum problem with reading and literacy. So that's a little bit different than me trying to say, like, okay, what type of reset do we want to have on the measurable goals for our performance versus the rest of the state of Wisconsin, which we're probably, that's in jeopardy because we want to, make a 5% improvement in relationship to the rest of the test scores in Wisconsin. So I would say definitely dial that back down, but I would want to know precisely what you're thinking about doing to improve literacy in those target areas, which are elementary school, middle school, and high school, which is not necessarily linked to performance on a test score.
I guess if I could interject. So the measurables will be coming back at our next meeting. They'll be up for discussion. If any board member does not feel comfortable with approving it on July 12th, we can always table it to the next meeting and allow for more discussion time. So.
Can I ask one
Fair.
question?
Yep.
So under the column on the strategic pillar action plans year 1, 2019-20, right, that's the actions, and then the next column is the goals. You mentioned the 5% improvement in the test scores. And so the one that's there, that's kind of a carryover, I think, on all three grades, elementary, middle school, high school, was personalized writing instruction to enhance student literacy. So that's the intervention being called out in the current document. What I think you're saying, what I'm hearing is you'd like to see more content in that place of this document beyond that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And bring it into alignment with what the focus is that we put together for that document for our goals that are coming here. So that would just fill out that little chunk that's doesn't have a lot of description to it in the 5-year plan.
So would an intervention potentially be for this year coming out of the COVID period of kind of learning loss or whatever it's being called, to reassess what those gaps are for those strategies?
I assume they've probably already done that because they're going to put together a proposal for us on the 12th. So I don't know what that would look like.
Well, and some of the measurements might not be ready until we get more information about where we're at. I mean, we're going to give you as many measurables as we can, but until we get more information about our assessments, there's only so much we know at this time.
Amy?
And the test scores right now, the testing is embargoed, right, till like October?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the reason that we don't have the data to do that, I would guess.
For that piece. We do have local STAR data, but
Okay,
there's only so much that can be gleaned from that as well.
okay. And then when I see review and monitor student achievement and reestablish baseline levels as needed, I understand what Chris is saying, but to make it more brief, I guess, what we're asking is, what are we going to do? What kind of curriculum or what kind of thing are we going to do to make sure that that is being done?
What kind of curriculum are we going to?
Like what strategies and what are you doing? Are you going to change curriculum or are you going to?
No, I mean, we're gonna review and monitor student achievement and reestablish baseline levels as needed. So we're gonna take the time to set the baseline levels for that particular item. But that's what I'm asking, you know, are there suggestions the board has that you want added to the measurements before you approve it at the next meeting? I am gonna be talking to the lead team again and see if they have any other suggestions, but, you know, now's a good opportunity if you want to discuss it.
Clint?
Another piece that kind of ties in with this too is by statute, we're required to do a survey of parents and families annually. When is that done? I should know this. There's a couple questions I got here.
I don't know if Brian or Tony want to chime in on it. I do know that our title staff, typically in the spring, often do that. Brian or Tony, do either of you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so each spring, as part of our Title I planning, that survey does go out related to parent input and needs. So that would have been completed in late May, early June.
And Brian, were there any changes made to it related to COVID to kind of see where parents or families thought the gaps were as far as their kids learning? Or was it the same survey that goes out every year?
It was very similar in nature. Parents did have the opportunity to provide comments related to that, and then that is used as part of the goal setting process for each individual building. That if board members who have been part of our updates that we do typically in October, we share a summary of the building goals for each school year as part of their school improvement planning process as well. So while the survey results themselves don't necessarily come back directly to the board, the goals based off of that process does come back to the board.
Okay, that's helpful because I do think, especially given everything that's going on over the last year, I think families, parents probably have a lot more insight on where their kids actually at in most cases. Probably not all, but in most cases, just to have a better idea where they see problems and what's going on as far as lost learning. So, thank you.
But, you know, I think if you look at this work plan, it's very comprehensive. In fact, it may be too much. You know, and that was one thing we were warned about when we put the strategic plan together, is that it's so comprehensive. You know, the more you try to do, sometimes that could create problems. I think we have the team, and I think we have the teachers and the staff to get this all done. I do think it's very helpful to have it prioritized, like Carl said, in case we run into more COVID issues than what we're hoping. But I think we have a good map here for what we should be focusing on as we enter the 2021-2022 school year.
Amy?
I was just going to ask, when you said Title I, does that mean it just goes to the Title students that are, it's all students on campus? Okay.
Yep, all the school, or all the families in those buildings receive an opportunity to provide input through that survey.
Okay, all right, just want to clarify, that's a clarifying question, thank you.
Carol?
So the focus item, personalized writing instruction to enhance student literacy, that's been on here, that is a strategy applied to the learners to try and affect the outcomes, right? That's what that's about. I think what you're saying is, should we be answering the question, what do we need to do differently? And that's the outcome, is defining the gaps, and that's what you want to do with the lead team, I assume. As opposed to, this seems like a very narrow personalized writing instruction. How did we know, or how do we know that personalizing writing instruction is the thing that will enhance literacy? Right? Do you see what I'm saying? And so that's the only thing called out in that list, when maybe the real outcome should be picking this apart and saying, why do we think we need, where's the problem, right? And the answers to that come later through the process of getting there.
Angie?
I guess I have a question with some of the questions that you guys have been asking as far as what our responsibility and roles are as board members. I know the strategic plan was developed and worked on, so you have a guide and an outline. As far as accomplishing the goals and deciding what's priority, does that not fall to operations and the people that are in charge of these areas within the district? And then we are here to support it. And if we do have questions or concerns, we contact you prior to the meeting, and that's all discussed and questions are answered. I mean, I feel like you're getting really involved in the details, which is someone else's job and not our job to diagnose. And I guess my question is, how much are we supposed to be diagnosing problems in the district? I mean, I'm not a professional when it comes to reading or literacy or anything like that. I trust that we have people employed in the district that know what's going on and that the principals and the staff are meeting and they're deciding what's priority. So I'm trusting when you're putting documents forward that that's what you see fit as an administrator and that's your job, and I'm here to support that. And so I'm confused because every meeting that I've been to since we started, it's this continuously second guessing the superintendent and the information he's putting forward. And I feel like this was done completely. It does align with Pillar 1 in the strategic plan. And so if you had a concern, I don't understand why it wasn't addressed prior to the meeting. I don't know. Can someone answer my question or how they feel about it, or?
I guess I would ask, Joe's asked for comments a number of times tonight. Exactly what are you, feedback, or what kind of feedback are you expecting from the board, Joe?
Well, I tried to glean what the discussion has taken, and I do take away that some of these could be developed into a more smarter goal format. For instance, where it says expand personalized writing instruction to enhance student literacy. Okay, so what kind of product are we going to build out of that? And I think that's something we can improve. Some of the other ones, again, we're not going to have more information until later. But what I'm pleased to hear is it sounds like, from what I can tell, is that the board is in consensus that this is the work plan, these are the priorities, and whether we modify some of the language, again, to make a few of these things more of a SMART goal, I think that could be beneficial. That general feedback is very helpful, but I guess what I mostly want to make sure is that there's not anything missing that the board expects us to do for this next year. And it sounds like we have it pretty well covered.
So is it the board's job to develop the literacy plan that you're suggesting, or is that something that you work with the administration staff here and the directors here and you guys develop? That's not our job.
Well, I'm not going to tell the board how to govern, but most boards would have the administrative team work with the faculty and staff and develop that.
Shirley?
I'd just like to build on what Angie said. We're a policy-making body. I may be wrong here, but I don't believe any of us have degrees or master's degrees or doctorates or any other kind of degree in curriculum development and building what this should be. So I agree, Angie, we need to say, this is roughly where we want to go, and then have administration come back to us with the roadmap. This is the city that we want to go to. They can tell us how to get to that city, and then we can agree if that's the route that we think is the right route to take. That's my personal opinion. I don't think it's our job to be saying, that we're going to take this road and then that road when it's not our expertise.
Okay, many of us are butting up against our two-time limit discussion, especially Chris. So I guess what I would ask is that between now and our next meeting, if you have any suggestions, changes that you'd like to make to this document or things that you want to change, get them into Joe, communicate with him on them, and then we can move forward.
Dave, if we could put a timeline in, that would be really helpful, because we're going to keep working on this. So I don't know what's fair for board members, in case you want the weekend, maybe noon on Monday of next week.
Fair enough? Okay, I see heads nodding. Chris, if you want to make a motion to suspend the rules, you can.
No, we can discuss procedure at any moment during the meeting, and this is just answering Angie's question about procedure, about whether or not we should, as a board, individually reach out to Joe with any questions we have about the agenda items. And this is an issue that comes up regularly, and it's important that we do kind of, address that. if we act individually as board members and we ask individual questions of the superintendent and that we aren't all involved in that question and answer session, we aren't doing our job as a board, which is supposed to be deliberating together. Also, that means that certain board members have certain information that other board members don't have. And this is a really important part of like our board policy, that we want to be as inclusive and make everybody as aware of the discussions and the questions that we have, so that we all have the same opportunity to understand the question in the very same way. So, Angie, honestly, I agree with everything that you said, except I think that maybe some of us have been misinformed in terms of the degree to which we should be having independent discussions with the superintendent outside of the way in which his body operates.
I'm going to call you on. All I will say is that what Angie and many of us have talked about is that feedback with Joe on issues is important. When Board Docs comes out, you have the information in front of you. If you have questions, he invites questions to him to try to help answer and fill out the information for all board members. Because when somebody has a question or there's a change that Joe should make, he will update Board Docs and put it in here so that every board member has that. So I think that was what Angie was getting at as far as feedback, or not to create discussion that the rest of the board doesn't have, but help the whole process move along. And
Can I respond to that or not? Am I done?
You can respond to process at any moment during the meeting.
I think
so
that-
if it's a procedure question, it's totally okay for you to do that.
I think that some of what I said was completely lost on you, because my point is that Joe is the superintendent and he's managing our district, and you are over-analyzing, over-detailing, solving problems and things like that instead of oversight. And a lot of times, some of the things that you go on and on and on about don't even totally make sense. And so it's hard to answer your questions because no matter what people say, you misconstrue things and blow things out of proportion. And so like going forward, I think if you have detailed questions that you want answers to, I would appreciate that you would talk to Joe and then bring it to the board in more of an oversight role, because that's part of his duty as his position. And some of the things that you do, it's like you're acting as a superintendent yourself when you are a board member and you're oversight. I guess that's all I have to say.
okay, anything else on this discussion item? Let's move on. Item 4C, review SDMA Education for employment plan. We have Ryan.
Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Stair.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This is an annual report that gets shared with board members related to education for employment here at the tail end of June. This will come back for your formal approval at a future meeting. Much of the plan is the same structure and a lot of the same information that was shared last year with the board. As far as information, as far as labor markets, that has been updated. I think Ryan for going in and doing a lot of that work. You'll notice some of the dates as you scroll through on post-secondary enrollment and trends. That data has not yet been released from the state of Wisconsin, so it is no different than what you saw last year. A couple of things, though, that we wanted to highlight on had to do with some updates that we made related to dual credit opportunities for students over the last year, which was bringing online our SDMA CDTC Business Management Dual Credit Academy. So we had several students that started that program where they'll exit high school at the completion of that with an associate's degree in business management, and we'll be enrolling our second cohort here in the fall. I think something around 17 students in the fall, adding to that group. Another piece that we have continued to work on, and what Mr. Siri is going to talk a little bit, has to do with our academic and career plans. Ed for Employment, back when it was started in the mid-'80s, was in response to the growing concern over the number of youth who weren't making a successful transition into post-secondary endeavors. And then in the early 2000s, academic and career planning was added into for employment. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Sterry, who will talk a little bit about some of the academic and career planning activities.
Sure. So if you scroll through this slideshow that Brian shared out and Jamie shared out here earlier this last week, essentially what our ACP is academic and career plan. So it's a structured curriculum to really, in a nutshell, teach students what they want to do in the future. And really, we feel that that's such an essential part to our curricular offerings here throughout our district, because once students learn what they want to do, then from that point, I really believe that all the classes that they're taking really become quite relevant, whether it's a general contractor that decides that, hey, or a student that wants to be a general contractor decides that they want to do that, those English classes fall into place to be able to write a professional bid, of course, the math classes and all of those different types of technical classes as well. So what that is activities that students start working on essentially in the elementary school and then proceed all the way through high school. We have really a variety of those activities. We follow a Zello curriculum, which the majority of schools within the state do follow. So there are structured activities that teach the kids what they want to do, what their learning styles are, and courses they should be taking, hopefully to support that. And then these career plans are given to our counselors, so our counselors can work with students to take classes within their interest in their program of study. So hopefully they're saving a lot of time. These courses are relevant to them, and then when they graduate from school, these kids are saving a lot of time and are able to go into whatever post-secondary training program it is that does interest them. So we are expanding those activities this next year. Casey and I actually have a meeting here in early July where we're going to talk more about our academic career plans. Some of the ways that we do plan on expanding them is adding more academic and career planning days. Casey has a structure and kind of a plan in place to do that. Bringing our job fair back so it's face-to-face. This last year it was virtual. And also getting students on more industry tours as well. So setting up a industry tour day where students, if they've expressed interest in, let's say, agri-science or manufacturing or healthcare, that can go out and they can take tour of these companies, and see all the great things that are really going on right in our backyard. So that's kind of our plan right now for our academic career activities. If you have any specific questions, I can definitely answer them. So any questions related to academic career plans? Amy?
The academic career plans, is that required or is that optional?
It is required. Yep, it's a state mandate. I believe, Brian, through our Education for Employment, PI 26, I believe, is the mandate, and it was developed probably within the last 6 or 7 years.
Okay, and does everybody,
Yes.
I mean, everybody is met, even ones that are kind of slow to do it, you still are able to get hold of them and contact them?
Yes. Yep. So for instance, in the high school, we have 4 academic career planning days where we have Zello activities, and if you look on a slide or two back, there are outlined activities for freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and likewise the same thing in the middle school, so kids will participate in those days. And we've structured it so that way the student study hall teachers will actually facilitate the career and academic planning days, so that follow that Zello curriculum, and then their guidance staff will have access to the results of that. So when students have their freshman and their junior meeting, they can sit down and see that, hey, this student might be interested in healthcare or finance and things like that, and then sign them up for classes that would hopefully be relevant to them.
So, but all the kids do participate across the board. Yep, that was one of our goals. And then we also have other activities like the job fair that the high school students will participate in. Middle students will participate in a career venture activity that's funded through grant dollars, and elementary school students will do similar activities. Yep.
Thank you. And then I could jump in, a parental example. My wife Amy and I have a son who will be a junior this coming school year. And going back to when he was a 6th grade student, we were just kicking this off. And one of the activities they did was an interest inventory as 6th graders. And based off of that, it was a list of several potential career areas he may be interested in. Fast forward to the summer before he's been researching different universities that have program areas and has been in conversation with his counselor during the last school year how to go about setting up either virtual tours or in-person tours so he can start to explore whether or not those would be right fits for him to the point where next Friday we're in the process of trying to schedule an on-campus visit in a program area. So as not only as a staff member but also as a parent, being able to see those pieces connect.
I see on one of the slides, you show a 14% growth rate in the construction field.
Yep.
And when I talk to guys in the construction field, they're starving for workers. They just cannot get skilled labor to do their jobs.
Correct.
And, so how do you adapt those needs that you see in the industries that as they change?
Sure. What we do in career and technical education as part of my role as a CTE coordinator, we develop advisement committees. So for instance, an example like in manufacturing within Tech Ed, we developed an advisement committee for that where we meet a couple of times a year. And a couple of years ago, it was decided that we really needed to add, or we should add more automation to our metalworking areas. So we sat down with folks from Schmidt Prototypes, Prototype Solutions, Phillips Plastics, REB, Vincent Tool, and a number of different industry partners. Brian was there, Casey was there, or maybe it was David at the time, and talked about really kind of a plan of what the direction is. We had a curriculum available for these partners and what our direction should be for those areas. And it actually resulted in us purchasing, through a lot of support from Dr. Sadowski, Brian, and Leah, a new CNC Haas milling machine this year, so we could have similar equipment to what folks would have at Schmidt Prototypes or Prototype Solutions. And same thing with construction. We had a advisement committee, and each year we focus in a little bit different areas so we can kind of streamline our work, where we sat down with John Larson, I believe it is, at Bear Valley. Mark Lewis was a part of it at Cedar Falls Builders. We had folks from Ahern Industries. We invited Louis Bjork. I worked pretty closely with Louis and Todd Sins and Halverson Brothers. We talked about what are some of the things that kids need to be doing in those areas. What do we need to be doing in, CTE and technology education, so that way kids are, one, getting excited about this, which is kind of part of this academic career plan as well. And what type of coursework can we have them work towards, so that way they get out there and can fill these needs and go on to an apprenticeship, technical college, 4-year degree, whatever it might be. And that 14% growth, some of those areas I know you see on there that it shows job projections, and those are the projections that they feel they can fill. So actually there's, really a tremendous need. I just got off the phone yesterday with Craig Wildenberg. I talked to folks at Chef Check Builders this year. Jeff Nenn saying, the list kind of goes on and on for these folks that work with us. And hey, you got senior internships doing, you got a kid that's a junior or senior. We want happier construction.
These guys are talking to these kids 2-3 years. Some of them are freshmen and they're already starting to groom the kids for construction fields when they get out of school and things like that, schooling and helping pay for their education out of school and that. So thank you, appreciate that answer. So.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's just a lot of opportunity. We're finding more and more of that, Dave, too, where folks are coming in and kids are already spoken for in the technical colleges. They want to get into high school, and that's why we got a lot of industry support on the CNC milling machine, because they want to get machines like that in our schools, so that way kids are excited about it and can go on to the next step.
That, and these kids adapt so fast to this new
Yes.
technology, it's so easy for them to latch onto it, so.
Yeah, we have a kid like that. For Tom Garris right now, he's gonna know more than what we know, he's gonna be teaching us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't say enough about the job that Ryan and the staff at the high school and middle school do when it comes to providing students an opportunity to explore different areas, because now is the time for them to do that, and then to work, not just in our elective areas, but our staff in our core academic areas, when you think about the traditional core academic areas, the staff are working together about how do they align the different types of positions kids might have that are going to utilize those skills and build through post-secondary and geometry.
Chris?
I had a couple of questions, and I'll try to make sense this time. The first one is, did you say they have 4 days during the year that they're devoted towards the students? Those aren't complete days.
No, not complete days, those are just activities within study hall, and those are just the 4 curricular activities, and then there's a number of other activities, you see, like with our community partners, and if we were to back up a couple of slides, we'll have students that will have a job fair that's sponsored through the chamber. Dr. Zanowski's wife and myself and Jill have been meeting with a number. We were at the Class Factory, we were with the city. We're really trying to kind of bridge that, be that bridge between industry and then the high school. So we'll also have students doing a number of other things throughout the year. We want to develop some industry tours where we can have a group of kids go out and we can drop them off at the industrial park. Maybe they can go out to, Alpha Lawn Farms or Denmark Dairy, or, go out to Lee and Jim Jensen's, if they're interested in those types of things. So there's a number of activities, but it's really kind of interwoven within all the curriculum areas, and such an important part in all the subjects that kids take is to learn about, okay, where am I going to use this in the future and what type of career jobs.
Go ahead.
And so the follow-up that I was really trying to get at, and of course, some parents have an advantage about being really invested in where their children are at and what they're learning. But there was kind of a piece that I thought maybe was missing from the PowerPoint presentation, is how we're engaging parents in making this their project. And that type of outreach gets a lot of reinforcement for the kids. Like if they go out and get excited about something, that's not unlikely, but it also is going to be more likely that parents are involved in this process. And I noticed that when I go to my parent-teacher conferences, I'm not saying that career counseling should be an important part of that, but maybe it should be a focus of at least one of those meetings. And thinking about how we're thinking about the education that their kids are getting are really leading towards the interests that maybe their parents don't even know about. That's the thing that's really, stoking my imagination. And Clint was talking about this earlier. A lot of parents are really knowing more about their kids' education in this year than they ever have before. And so it might be a great way of you trying to knit together that career education is their education in the SDMA, and finding ways in which they can make parents, because of course Brian, of course he's all over, his kids' development and Amy, but other parents don't have that advantage of being kind of wedded to the importance of that relationship. So bringing parents into the equation, I think, would just be a really nice.
Sure, and I should have probably highlighted that a little bit more on the slideshow. We do have, and this is in the high school, we do have parent meetings where they are brought into it, our freshman meetings as well as junior meetings. So I could have probably outlined that a little bit more, and that one's on me there, where the students and the parents will sit down with the guidance counselors. They have access to their student academic career plans through Zello, and then they can sit down and see that, my daughter's son is interested in X, Y, and Z, these are their learning styles. Let's take a look at this coursework, and then we have our programs of study that are published within career clusters, which is also part of some grants that we write, where now they can take a look at, okay, my student is interested in, let's say business, these are the classes that they can take. So we try to do a lot of that, and of course, always open to questions, and there's probably, as we proceed through that.
Thank you, Ryan. Any other questions?
No, I would just like to say that I appreciate everything that you've done as a teacher, because my son now is doing construction management at the University of Minnesota. And I can attest to the fact that parents are involved. Like my daughter did some career exploration things through some of her classes, and they do require, they bring it home, the parent has to sign it and approve it. She went and she visited your farm. She visited the Glenwood City Veterinary Clinic. She oversaw surgeries at Hoof and Paw, and she went to Chippewa Valley Vet and spent a day there doing dental work. And so that's kind of her career exploration, and I was involved and had to approve all of that for her. So I don't know if all the coursework, if all the classes operate that way, but I was included in all of that as a parent. So just wanted to say that.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Okay, we have nothing for item 4D for extracurricular staff contract request. Item 4E, review next meeting dates. Our next board meeting is July 12th at 5:30. We will, so with that, we'll adjourn this meeting, then we'll take a 5-minute break before we start our next meeting. So a motion to adjourn. Angie, and a second, Amy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Please stand adjourned.